When I began the college magazine project, I didn't really take into account how much goes into a magazine, so therefore I only really looked into other existing college magazines. I didn't research a lot of it. I only really looked into other existing magazines to get ideas of layouts and how I could copy them in my own magazine, but I didn't really look in detail at the conventions that were used and why they were used in a certain way. And that kind of showed in my end result, as it wasn't professional at all. However, I did use this research to base how I would style my images that I took. The majority of them were in bright and happy settings with students doing things that were admirable, like sports and studying, and I copied that idea into my own work. But when it came to layouts and conventions and how they could be adapted, I had no idea. I basically made the magazine from what I thought would be a good idea, and not what made it look more real and professional. On the other hand, when it got to my music magazine project, I made sure that I researched in depth what magazine conventions were and how they could be adapted for different magazines. So I studied 12 completely different music magazines and saw how styles were adapted or sometimes completely broken to create a different genre of music, a different purpose, and how that would affect the target audience and make them want to buy it. So when it came to my magazine, I knew that I could adapt typical conventions that I knew existed into my genre, which was punk rock music. I also researched what kind of articles I could use within my magazine, and through completing some target audience investigations I knew that what they would enjoy the most and what they would pay money to read. I took the genre of my music magazine a lot more seriously than I did in my college magazine. I studied in depth what the bands of music were about and why the fans enjoyed their music so much, and what kind of fashion they were into, what their lifestyle was like, so what they would like to see in the magazine basically. This in the end impacted how I styled my magazine, because I styled it so it suited their style and interests. With the planning stage of my college magazine, I wasn't fully prepared due to my lack of research. I created some flat plans of layout ideas for my covers and contents page. This allowed me to figure out what kind of style of images I would need, and from there I created sketches. They were terrible, but they helped me get ideas before I actually went into the photo shoot. But when it came to costumes, I didn't completely plan ahead. I mostly just went with what they were wearing at the time, which kind of suited because we were in a college environment anyway. My overall preparation was pretty terrible. However, I learnt from that, when it came to planning my music magazine, that I needed to look a lot more in depth of what was in every image and how the page was laid out. I completed 3 detailed flat plans for my cover, my contents and my DPS. I tried various styles and conventions and adapted them in different ways to see which worked better, and I analysed later why I didn't like some and why I preferred the others. From there I figured out what images I needed, and taking my research into account, I knew what positions and camera angles worked best. I used this to create sketches, again absolutely shocking. I also created ideas of costumes that I wanted, and how they would suit the style and genre that I'm aiming for and appeal more to that target audience. As for who was going to wear the clothes, I found various models and analysed them for if they worked with the genre or if they didn't, and picked from there. Every picture I took within the photo shoot, I analysed all the different positions, the settings, the styles, and picked which ones worked best with my chosen magazine style. I also planned which fonts would work best in different places and within my magazine, and which ones would stand out the most and which would work with the genre. When I started the production of my college magazine, I was a bit lost due to my lack of preparation and research and planning. I tended to try and be more creative with what I was doing, which often led to me breaking some typical conventions that added to the professionalism. So my overall product didn't look real at all. The colour scheme wasn't thought out, and it led to colour clashes. When I began the project I was new to Adobe Photoshop, which meant my creativity was limited on it. I didn't really know how to edit images to make them appeal in a certain way. This meant that conventions that were meant to stand out, like the splash and the masthead, ended up fading into the background. I wasn't aware of any simple edits like drop shadows that could have added to the professionalism and made them pop off the page more. However, when it got to the music magazine, I felt a lot more at ease and experience with Adobe Photoshop. I was able to use YouTube tutorials to help create unique fonts and image styles, making them stand out more and suit my genre. I was able to make things like my splash look a lot more punk rock. I also learnt how to use different computer softwares like Adobe InDesign, which helped me more with the professional side of things. I was able to make sure the text was in the correct space in between the columns, and if mistakes were made like that, like they were in my college magazine, it completely took away from the real effect of it. Overall, I've learnt a lot from my college magazine. I was completely unprepared and inexperienced when I was creating that, and when I got to the production I didn't really know what I was doing with it. Whereas when I got to my music magazine I made sure I was properly prepared for it and knew what I was doing and why, and the reason behind it, the impact it would have on the target audience, and this made it overall a much better product.